7th December 1941, Pearl Harbor. A young Marine watches Japanese aircraft strafe Battleship Row whilst he crouches behind a concrete barrier. His rifle is useless against the diving aircraft, but 3 enemy soldiers appear through the smoke, advancing towards the damaged USS Arizona. He pulls the pin on his Mark II fragmentation grenade, counts to 4, and hurls it. The explosion drops all 3 attackers. He reaches for another grenade, then another. The simple cast iron sphere with its distinctive pineapple texture becomes his primary weapon for the next hour. When the attack ends, he's thrown 11 grenades, every single one detonated. Not one dud, not one misfire, not one failure. 80 years later, American soldiers are still throwing that same grenade in Afghanistan. The Mark II fragmentation grenade costs approximately $3 to manufacture. The battleships burning at Pearl Harbor cost millions each. Every one of those battleships is gone now, scrapped or sunk. The grenade is still in production. This is the story of the weapon that refused to become obsolete. The problem begins in 1917. American forces arrive in France carrying the Mark I grenade, a smooth cast iron sphere based on British designs. It's adequate for trench warfare, but field reports reveal troubling patterns. The fragmentation is inconsistent. Some grenades produce dozens of lethal fragments. Others shatter into just a few large pieces that wound rather than kill. Soldiers throwing grenades into German trenches watch survivors emerge seconds later, rifles raised. The smooth casing doesn't generate enough shrapnel points. The explosive force dissipates inefficiently. Doughboys are dying because their grenades aren't killing the enemy. Lieutenant Colonel René Studler of the Army Ordnance Department reviews hundreds of combat reports throughout 1917. The pattern is undeniable. The Mark I grenade lacks stopping power. German stick grenades produce more consistent fragmentation despite using less explosive. The French citron grenade, whilst awkward to throw, creates devastating fragment patterns. American grenades need redesign. Studler requests proposals for a new fragmentation grenade with specific requirements. Consistent fragmentation creating maximum casualties within a 5-meter radius, simple enough for conscripts to manufacture in existing foundries, reliable enough to function after months in muddy trenches, and cheap enough to produce by the millions. The solution comes from a metallurgist who doesn't look like a revolutionary. William Mills, working for Mills Munitions in Birmingham, has already solved this problem for the British Army in 1915. His grenade uses a grooved cast iron body that creates predetermined fracture points. When the explosive detonates, the grooves ensure the casing fragments into consistent shrapnel. It's elegant physics applied to lethal effect. The grooves weaken specific points in the metal, controlling how it shatters. Instead of random fragmentation, you get predictable lethality. American ordnance engineers study the Mills bomb extensively. They recognize the grooved body principle is sound, but the British design uses a complex firing mechanism that American factories aren't equipped to mass produce. The solution requires American innovation applied to British physics. Engineers at the Ordnance Department begin experimenting with simplified mechanisms whilst retaining the grooved body concept. They need a grenade that can be assembled by workers who've never seen one before using equipment already present in American foundries. The breakthrough comes in late 1917. Engineers develop a cast iron body with horizontal and vertical grooves, creating a distinctive pineapple texture. The pattern isn't decorative. Each groove is precisely measured to create fracture points that generate approximately 40 to 50 fragments upon detonation. The body weighs 21 ounces, heavy enough to throw accurately but light enough for sustained combat. Inside, a 1.8 5-ounce charge of TNT provides the explosive force. The fuse mechanism is brilliantly simple. Pull the pin, release the safety lever, and a spring-loaded striker hits the primer. 4 to 5 seconds later, detonation. What makes the design revolutionary is its mechanical simplicity. The entire grenade contains fewer than 10 components. The body is a single casting. The fuse assembly contains a striker, spring, a primer, delay element, and detonator. A safety pin holds the lever. That's it. No complex mechanisms, no precision machining. Any foundry capable of casting iron can produce the bodies. Any munitions plant can assemble the fuses. The design favors production speed over sophistication. In wartime, you need millions of grenades. Complexity is the enemy of mass production. Testing begins in early 1918 at Aberdeen Proving Ground. The army isn't gentle. They want to know what happens when everything goes wrong. Grenades are dropped from height onto concrete. They're submerged in water for weeks. They're frozen solid, then thrown. They're stored in ovens at 140 degrees Fahrenheit, then detonated. They're buried in mud, dug up and thrown immediately. The question isn't whether the grenade works under ideal conditions. The question is whether it works after 6 months in a French trench during winter. The results are extraordinary. Across 5,000 test detonations, the failure rate is less than half of 1%. The grooved body produces consistent fragmentation every single time. The fuse mechanism functions regardless of temperature, moisture, or rough handling. The simplicity that engineers built into the design proves itself through brutal validation. On the 17th of May 1918, the United States Army officially adopts the grenade as the Mark II. Production orders go out immediately. American factories need to produce hundreds of thousands before the next spring offensive. Manufacturing ramps up rapidly. The design simplicity allows widespread production. Foundries across America cast bodies. Munitions plants assemble fuses. By November 1918, production reaches 50,000 grenades per week. The war ends before most Mark IIs see combat, but the manufacturing infrastructure remains. The Army recognizes it possesses a weapon that requires no improvement. The Mark II is cheap, reliable, and lethal. Why replace perfection? The first comprehensive combat validation comes during the Second World War. The Mark II becomes ubiquitous. Every infantryman carries at least two. Tank crews carry them for close defense. Paratroopers carry them for clearing buildings. Marines carry them for bunker assault. The demand is staggering. Between 1941 and 1945, American factories produce over 70 million Mark II grenades. The design proves itself across every environment Earth can provide. It works in the frozen forests of the Ardennes. It works in the burning deserts of North Africa. It works in the steaming jungles of Guadalcanal. It works in the rubble of Italian towns. It works in the caves of Iwo Jima. It works in the hedgerows of Normandy. It works. Soldiers learn to trust it absolutely. When you pull the pin and throw a Mark II, it detonates. Every time. That reliability becomes legendary. Lieutenant Audie Murphy proves the grenade's worth on the 26th of January 1945 near Holtzwihr, France. Surrounded by German infantry advancing through heavy fog, Murphy exhausts his rifle ammunition. He climbs onto a burning tank destroyer and begins throwing grenades whilst calling artillery strikes on his own position. He throws 11 Mark II grenades in 15 minutes, each one detonating precisely when expected, creating casualties that slow the German advance long enough for artillery to arrive. He receives the Medal of Honor. The grenades that saved his life cost $33 total. The pattern repeats throughout the Pacific Theater. Marines assaulting Japanese bunkers on Peleliu rely on Mark II grenades to neutralize defenders. The grooved body creates fragment patterns that ricochet inside concrete fortifications, making the grenade more effective than flamethrowers in confined spaces. On Okinawa, soldiers throw Mark IIs into caves where Japanese soldiers hide. The fragmentation pattern is devastating in enclosed spaces. Every fragment becomes a projectile with nowhere to dissipate energy except through human tissue. Combat reports from both theatres confirm the same conclusion. The Mark II works. Failure rates in combat remain below 1%. Soldiers trust it because it never disappoints. When your life depends on a grenade detonating, that reliability matters more than any incremental improvement in explosive force or fragment count. The Mark II isn't the most powerful grenade. It isn't the lightest. It isn't the most sophisticated. It's simply the most reliable. By war's end, production exceeds 70 million grenades. The cost per unit remains around $3. The American military possesses stockpiles sufficient for decades, and yet production continues. The Korean War consumes millions more. Vietnam consumes millions more. Every conflict proves the same truth. The Mark II doesn't need replacement. It needs replenishment. Korea introduces the Mark II to brutal winter warfare. Soldiers discover the grenade functions flawlessly at 40 degrees below zero. The simple fuse mechanism doesn't freeze. The spring maintains tension. The primer ignites. Chinese forces advancing in human waves meet walls of Mark II grenades. The fragmentation pattern proves devastatingly effective against massed infantry. American units in defensive positions throw grenades by the dozen. Everyone detonates. The stockpiles barely diminish before the war ends. Vietnam presents different challenges. The jungle environment tests every weapon system. Grenades stored in humid conditions for months develop rust. The Mark II continues functioning. Soldiers clearing Viet Cong tunnels carry satchels of grenades. The pineapple texture provides grip even with wet hands. Tunnel rats throw grenades into darkness, trusting the 4-second fuse to detonate before enemies can throw them back. The reliability soldiers depend on underground never wavers. The 1980s bring expectations of obsolescence. The Army adopts the M67 grenade, a smooth sphere using a different explosive compound and fuse mechanism. The M67 is slightly lighter and produces more fragments. It's supposed to replace the Mark II completely. Production of the Mark II is supposed to end. The military is supposed to exhaust existing stockpiles through training exercises and dispose of the rest. Instead, something remarkable happens. Special Operations Forces refuse to give up their Mark IIs. Delta Force continues carrying Mark II grenades through the 1990s. Navy SEALs maintain stockpiles. Marine Force reconnaissance units request Mark II specifically. The explanation is always the same: reliability. The M67 might be marginally better in controlled conditions, but the Mark II works regardless of conditions. When you're operating behind enemy lines and a grenade must absolutely detonate, you carry the weapon with 80 years of proven performance. The global war on terror validates this decision. American forces fighting in Afghanistan carry Mark II grenades into combat in 2001. The same grenade that Marines threw at Pearl Harbor is thrown in the Korangal Valley. Soldiers clearing Taliban compounds in Kandahar pull pins on grenades manufactured in the 1940s. They detonate every time. The 60-year-old grenades function as reliably as grenades manufactured last month. Iraq sees similar persistence. The Mark II proves ideal for urban warfare. The grooved body creates fragment patterns that neutralize threats in rooms without excessive overpenetration through walls. Soldiers clearing buildings in Fallujah carry both M67s and Mark IIs. The Mark II becomes preferred for confined spaces. Its heavier weight makes it easier to throw accurately through windows. The fragments stay within the room, reducing risk to nearby friendlies. As of 2024, the Mark II fragmentation grenade remains in American military inventory. Contracts for reproduction fuses are awarded as recently as 2019. Special operations units maintain dedicated stockpiles. The grenade has served continuously for 106 years. It has been thrown in every American conflict since the First World War. It has engaged every enemy America has fought for more than a century. The battleships at Pearl Harbor are museum relics or underwater graves. The grenade is still going to war. Manufacturing continues at limited scale. The original patents expired decades ago. The design is public domain. Any nation with a foundry can produce Mark IIs. Many do. Commercial manufacturers produce variants for law enforcement and civilian markets where legal. You can purchase the same grenade design, minus the explosive filling, that Audie Murphy threw in 1945. The only changes are cosmetic. The core design remains unchanged since 1918. The explanation for this longevity is simple: function. The Mark II does exactly what a fragmentation grenade should do. It creates lethal fragments within a predictable radius. The grooved body ensures consistent fragmentation. The fuse mechanism works regardless of environmental conditions. The weight and shape allow accurate throwing. The 4-second delay provides sufficient time to throw and seek cover. Every element serves its purpose without unnecessary complexity. Reliability matters more than marginal improvements. Modern grenades might produce 10 more fragments or weigh 3 ounces less. These advantages mean nothing if the grenade fails to detonate. The Mark II's mechanical simplicity ensures it works. The fuse contains no electronics to corrode. The spring maintains tension indefinitely. The primer chemistry remains stable for decades. Grenades manufactured in 1943 detonate in 2003 because nothing in the design can degrade. The stopping power remains relevant. A 1.85-ounce TNT charge creates overpressure that incapacitates even if fragments miss. The 40 to 50 fragments travel at velocities exceeding 4,000 feet per second immediately after detonation. Within 5 meters, the Mark II is absolutely lethal. Between 5 and 15 meters, it remains highly dangerous. Beyond 15 meters, fragmentation becomes unpredictable, but still capable of causing casualties. This effective radius hasn't changed in a century because human physiology hasn't changed. Ergonomics favor retention. The pineapple texture provides grip under any conditions. Wet hands, gloved hands, muddy hands, bloody hands. The grooves that create fragmentation points also create friction points that prevent the grenade slipping during the throwing motion. Soldiers can pull the pin with one hand whilst maintaining grip with the other. The weight distribution allows distance throwing without special technique. Any soldier who can throw a baseball can throw a Mark II accurately. Cost ensures persistence. At $3 per grenade, the Mark II costs less than a combat boot. Modern grenades cost $5 to $8 each. The difference seems minimal until you're procuring millions. The American military maintains grenade stockpiles in the tens of millions. Every dollar saved per grenade translates to millions saved overall. When the cheaper option is also more reliable, the economic argument for replacement evaporates. After 106 years and over 100 million grenades produced, the Mark II has proven one thing absolutely. It works. It worked in French trenches. It worked at Pearl Harbor. It worked in frozen Korea. It worked in Vietnamese jungles. It worked in Iraqi cities. It worked in Afghan mountains. It works. This simple truth overrides every argument for modernization. When soldiers need a grenade that absolutely, definitely, certainly will detonate, they reach for the pineapple. The weapon was supposed to cost $3 and last through one war. Instead, it became immortal. Some weapons are revolutionary, some are reliable, some are elegant. The Mark II fragmentation grenade is all three. It solved a problem in 1918 that remains unsolved by more sophisticated alternatives. It proved that simplicity beats complexity, that reliability beats sophistication, that function beats fashion. 106 years later, soldiers are still pulling the pin, counting to 4, and throwing the same grenade their great-grandfathers threw. The battleships are gone. The grenade endures.